So we're on our way to the Women's Library.
It won't be tiny anymore.
Okay.
Good morning, girls. Your mission, if you choose to accept it, involves finding out about what feminism means to you. And Saturdays, researching.
Yeah, right.
Learning about cameras, lights and action, creating a documentary and drama, and free food. And oh yeah, a little bit of fun.
I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. Director.
Why am I interested in monkeys? I don't think I am.
In the 21st century, it's alright to be nasty.
The list was a bit weird, but
Do I really have to tell a joke? I don't know anything.
Our research began at the Glasgow Women's Library, where we sifted through a huge collection of books, journals, records, magazines, videos and knitting patterns.
We keep knitting stuff because we've got a radical knitting group here called Stitch and Bitch, and it's part of women's culture, you know, so why not keep it?
So right now we're in this floor of the Women's Library and we're looking for books with the F word on them. And some of them have comments, and the librarians and people who work here have been writing what they think about the books, and we're sort of collecting them all together, and then we're going to go downstairs and take a closer look at them, I think.
I chose it because I'm sort of scared about being a wife, to be honest, like just ending up like, because I've always thought that like when you're a wife you kind of stop and you don't have a career or anything.
I just thought the picture looked quite interesting, and I didn't know what an activist was, so I asked Sam, and it just seems like quite a good book.
She's like kind of like in awe of this girl because she's like a pure rebel and she's like a rebel, pure Scottish, and basically I don't know, I just really enjoyed this book. I think it's because some of the stuff I could relate to because she's an Asian girl and so am I.
I've got a wee handout for you to remind you, and you have to do 3 each for yourself. And also remember, you can make it up.
Okay, so this is about the F word. So these are things that are about feminism.
It says the main battles of the women's liberation movement have been won. Feminism is no longer necessary.
I think it's not true.
There's no need for women-only spaces.
I think there is a lot of need for women-only spaces because there's lots of different reasons why people want them.
We discussed assumptions, myths and stereotypes about feminism, and looked at our own beliefs and where they came from.
The teacher went over my test and she gave me like 5 extra marks because the guy who sat next to me hadn't given me enough marks. And they don't like us doing well, they actually don't.
In Bacchus is still like, oh, I'm so cool.
Yeah. If you're next to them, you've got to sort of like move away and like squeeze up a bit.
We explore the history of feminism through a timeline.
One that we've talked about today a couple of times is Rosa Parks, so I thought...
The timeline is about women who've been prominent in feminism, and the 2 waves of feminism are both on the timeline. The first wave of feminism was like the suffragettes. The rights, opportunities and freedoms that women enjoy today have been fought for by subsequent generations of feminists.
I don't think there's ever been a time where women haven't come together to support each other around issues that they have to live with in their daily lives.
The first wave feminists came together in the 19th century to fight for women's basic rights to be protected by laws. These included the right to get custody of their children after divorce, the right of married women to own property, and the right to be educated. Some first wave feminists realised that the best way to get women's equality was to get women the vote. The campaign started in 1865 and lasted for 53 years. The suffragettes, led by Emmeline Pankhurst, were not the only women campaigning. What set them apart was that they ran a violent campaign, For example, setting fire to politicians' houses, and for such activities they were often imprisoned.
But if you have a look here, this is quite an interesting old section because there's some cracking things. Like this is an image of a woman with her tongue nailed. These were produced when women started asking for the votes.
When we were looking at the books in the Glasgow Women's Library, one of the first images I saw, again opposing the suffragettes, was the one of the woman with her tongue nailed to the bench, and that was just like horrific. I can't imagine women not being allowed to vote. In the early 19th century, the whole idea of equal rights for women was alien, even to the women who ruled the country.
This mad wicked folly of women's rights, with all its attendant horrors, on which my poor feeble sex is bent, forgetting every sense of womanly feelings and propriety. We are not amused.
What's more surprising is that there were women against women getting the vote, and they organised themselves in 1910 with the men who also opposed it as the National League for Opposing Women's Suffrage. They employed the talents of 2 willing male artists to run a campaign of posters and postcards. These show a variety of stereotypes of the suffragettes as bitter old spinsters and really bad mothers. And why did they not want women to get the vote? Because women's minds were too full of feminine things and they couldn't make decisions about important things such as war. Because women wouldn't understand the importance of having the vote. But the real reason was because they were scared.
If we allow women to vote, it will mean the loss of social structure and the rise of every liberal cause under the sun.
At the start of the First World War, the suffragettes not only ceased their activities, but actively helped out with the war effort. Elsie Ingalls, who was a pioneer of the Scottish Women's Suffrage Federation, organised and served in women's medical units in France, Russia and other fronts. After the war ended, women over 30 were finally granted the vote. Following these victories, women started a slow but steady rise towards taking an equal role to men in society, till World War II, when women effectively ran the country, working the land for food and in factories and hospitals to support the war effort. But after the war, this advance of women was not sustained, and in the 1950s, girls were still being chiefly educated to become housewives and mothers.
Over the 6 weeks of visits, we discovered a wide range of topics within feminism, and that it could mean something different to each one of us.
I was thinking about racism, and today I've been researching some black feminists. I was looking at Angela Davis, Mary Seacole, who was a nurse during the Crimean War, and Bell Hooks. I found out that Angela Davis is in the 10 Most Wanted for the FBI because she campaigned for black women's rights. They all had determination to do like what they thought was right and didn't give up.
Do you think that's an important quality for a woman?
Yeah.
The high point of our research was getting an interview with Bea Campbell as part of the International Women's Day event at the Scottish Parliament. Funny enough, this didn't happen at the Parliament because the roof fell in.
We feel as a group of young women that young women are put off the idea of feminism because they feel that in order to become equal to men, they have to become the same as men.
It's such an interesting thought that the idea that equality means being like men or being a feminist means women becoming like men. I can't imagine anything worse, actually. Because the whole point of this is that it's got very little to do with the idea of equality if the model that you aspire to is a man. But is what you get paid, is the sense of safety the same as his? Because you're entitled to that as a minimum.
Do you have a specific aim for the next generation?
Every generation has its own story to tell and its own argument to have. I do think, however, that it's a shame that each generation has to invent the wheel and can't learn from, or feels it can't learn from, the generation that came before it.
The generation that came before us were the second wave feminists, Despite the rights won by first-wave feminists in the 19th and early 20th century, in the 1960s, women still felt unequal to men and oppressed by society.
I grew up with a very strong sense of an unfairness and an injustice in the way that boys and girls and men and women were treated.
When I was a young woman, asked me what it meant to be a woman, I couldn't have told you. Because in a way, you were asking a question that was about a negative. You weren't the thing that had power, that could do anything it wanted to do. Being a woman was being with a man.
So I do regard myself as a feminist, but not that I hit the 70s and was suddenly enlightened by the feminist movement.
By the 70s, women started coming together in groups to discuss their situation. These groups commonly excluded men.
Yes, I can remember the first time in my entire life when I was in a room where there were only women and we had chosen to be there with each other. The moment when the women's liberation movement happened meant inventing a politics that was for us. It was fabulous.
These women sought a new definition of being a woman.
Modern feminism invented itself partly as a revolt against being a woman in a way that is defined by men, an object for their pleasure, for their control and management. But feminism is about a different journey. How do I get to tell my story? What is my story?
Second-wave feminists brought women's issues right to the front of public debate.
Feminism gave the inequality a profile, and the mass media picked up on some of the issues. There has been a flowering since the 70s of projects and organisations who work solely with women.
But you'll find in a book like this, us. It's our first women's library space. So whatever you're doing can end up in books. It's not like there's the people who get into books and then there's us. It's like we are the women who will be being books. I never thought of being a book, and here we are, we're in a book and in other books and so on.
When we first started doing this project, we didn't really know anything about feminism because we just really come for the food. We only knew that women wanted the vote sometime, and that was bad.
So to help us learn more about feminism, we asked the teachers in school and the public what they thought about it. Oh yeah, sorry about the sound.
The sound was bad because we had a wind problem.
What 3 words would you use to describe a feminist?
Independent. Sensitive.
This is dangerous. This is so dangerous.
Suffragettes.
Bra burners.
Inquisitive.
Bitchy.
I can't think of 3 words. Oh, I don't know.
I don't know.
Feminism's a big term.
Yeah.
And when I was editing, I realised that by asking people to give me 3 words to describe a feminist, I was asking them to give me words they use to oversimplify and make stereotypical judgments towards the feminist.
What do you mean? Just get it done.
Excuse me, could we have an interview?
I don't have time for an interview. What do you mean? Oh my god.
There's no groups, man. It's just peace and love. Everything's equal.
What has driven you to these desperate measures?
I am sick and tired of being paid less than men who do the same job as me.
What is the wage difference?
That's not the point. It's a principle, but it is hundreds.
Shave my legs? I don't think so. All men are pigs, and I'm not going to shave for any of them.
For most of my friends and I, one of the most important things in life is to have fun.
develop.
Do we know our freedoms have been fought for by feminists? Do we care? Or is it even relevant? I kind of want to see how feminism has actually had a direct effect on our lives today as young women. A lot of the freedoms that we have nowadays is due to feminism, so you probably should know about it if you're going to take advantage of it. Well, I have been filming my granny and filming my mum to compare what freedoms they've had and what their life was like and how that's changed. My granny was born in Edinburgh in 1937. Her name is Kate McNally. She was a librarian, then got married and became a housewife. I don't know much about her past, but I know she likes her grandchildren to stay warm.
Well, I was at a grammar school, so you got things like Latin and algebra. We weren't prepared for life. If you went to a junior secondary school, you got sensible things like cookery, shorthand and typing, and the boys got joinery, woodwork. There was plenty of work going about. I mean, you could actually choose. In those days, you could choose if you had aspirations.
And why did you give up your job?
Because I got married in the library system. Not the men, of course, but the
Yeah.
women were expected to stop work and make way for juniors coming in. That was all what the expectations were. Still like that in the 50s. Got a job and got married and raised a family. The worst thing that could happen to a young woman was to become pregnant. Oh, it was worse than murdering somebody.
I think that's still the same.
Oh no, young women are having babies right, left and centre.
I know.
I mean, unmarried women.
I was shocked to hear my granny say that in her day getting pregnant was worse than murder. I wondered if young women today were judged in a similar way.
Like when I was pregnant, I stayed in Musselburgh and I was in a shop and I was two old women were in front of me and this woman turned around and said to me, "Are you not disgusted with yourself? And you're like 12-year-old." And I was like, "I'm not 12. I was like, I'm 18 years old, and who are you if I say to me that it's disgusting that I'm pregnant and I'm going to have a child?"
The attitudes we pick up when we're young often remain unchanged through life, and I wondered how the attitudes of my mum's generation compared. My mum was born in Edinburgh in 1964. Her name is Louise McNally. She went to uni, got married, had 3 children, and for most of my life has been a stay-at-home mum. But this year she qualified as a midwife. I'm really proud of her.
I was never ambitious. I did want to just get married and have children. When I was your age, I had a boyfriend, so I used to see him a couple of evenings a week at least. And I hung out with my friends a lot. I think we were fairly free, really. There weren't too many pressures. We certainly didn't have Cosmo Girl and all these magazines. We didn't have Hello, and it just didn't exist. So although everybody wanted to look good and everybody wanted to be a bit slimmer than they were and what have you, I think that there are more pressures on young people nowadays than there were then.
I think my mum's right. We do have more pressures on us nowadays. We're still expected to look good and to raise a family, but now on top of that we're expected to go out and get a decent job. I wanted to find out what young women thought about it, and I spoke to some women who worked with young women as well.
Women and men are totally different. And although they should be equal, do you know what I mean, in like education and careers and stuff like that and everything, we are still different from men. And I think that's do you know, the problem, do you know what I mean? That a lot of men think that women just want to be men, and they don't. They want to be women who have the same rights as men.
I think that the people in our generation are taking the work that feminists have done for granted, and they don't even realise it.
How come you don't know about feminism or feminists?
Because we aren't taught anything about it at school.
Do you think feminism has brought you freedoms and opportunities?
Girls weren't, they never used to send girls to school, did they?
No.
Did they not? Seriously?
No.
Well, we really don't know much.
Are you grateful for feminism?
Hell yeah! Yeah, because we don't have to stay home and look after children. We could have rights to abortions and we can do everything we want now.
And we don't have to get married.
Yeah, we don't have to get married. We can live with as many men as we want. And not do the dishes.
Like, say for young girls nowadays, like all the role models on TV and stuff, to be slim, put loads of makeup on, and like to get a nice guy.
When you're young, you're told like Prince Charming will save the damsel in distress, but you don't know that the damsel could save herself.
My name is Lunga Kashina and I'm a 16-year-old girl. During visits to Glasgow Women's Library, I had read a variety of books and I had noticed a book about feminism and working class women. Coming from a working class area, I wanted to know if the feminist movement had achieved anything for working class women and if it was even relevant to them. To find out more, I asked a couple of women what they thought. Do you think feminism is relevant to working class women?
I think there is a high level of consciousness and awareness of the inequality in our communities, in our homes, in our society and in the world between men and women. And there is a high level of awareness of that, I believe, amongst working class women. I remember growing up in Ireland in a very Catholic community in the 50s and 60s and becoming aware as I grew older that something wasn't right about how boys were treated and girls were treated. And I think it's the same for all working class women. What we're working against a lot of the time, though, there is the conditioning that we all receive to defer to the male side of society. And as we grow older, there are other elements that come into our consciousness about the inequality and the way we are treated in society.
I do think feminism is relevant to working class women, but I think if working class women are living in poverty, then the poverty takes over. So they're not focusing on what they want. They're focusing on the fact that they're struggling to pay bills, they're struggling to just survive. WAND stands for Women in New Directions, and it was a project that was based in the Greater Pilton area for about 7 or 8 years. And originally it was meant to be like a job centre, but the women who worked in the project fought so that the project would be run to allow women to get more than just those kind of jobs that women are forced into, cleaning jobs and those kind of jobs. So they gave us a bit more of a voice and the skills to take chances and not be frightened to take chances. For a wee while there was a project there that was all about feminism and was all about making women stronger, but it's got taken away and now there's nothing in its place.
I think women are much more inclined to work together, to work collectively, to work within their community. Whether women in the working class would choose to use the word feminism, because that's a very loaded word now, and it carries the baggage from the early movement in the 70s.
I didn't really know there were any women's groups till I did the project, and it's like really inspiring how like women in areas help each other.
Feminism is always relevant because the oppression hasn't stopped, sexism hasn't stopped, and it affects women all over the world.
Because money, capitalism, is what makes the world go round.
So do you agree in like communism then? Because that just didn't work.
Now it's like letting the rich people get richer and poorer people get poorer and leaving the gap, which means in the end we'll have to pull that together. And the only government can do that is communism, because it makes everyone equal.
It doesn't make everyone equal because like it really is just a dictatorship, and the buildings should get big concrete.
It's not a dictatorship. The only reason you think communism is dictatorship is because all the countries that are running it are dictatorship. They're not proper communisms.
It just hasn't been done right.
It's a very good idea. It's just not being operated correctly. I'm doing interviews with some Chinese women, whether feminism has affected Chinese women or not. I'm trying to get like a wide variety of like different people. I've lately just interviewed a freelance manga artist, different ages and different careers and stuff.
我的理解，女权运动的形成呢，是因为以前曾经女人的地位的卑微，在社会中的地位的卑微，在家庭中地位的卑微，尤其旧社会的中国女人那种三从四德的道德标准等等的，女人为了追求一种在社会中的地位和家庭中的平等，女人要有一些运动，这样才形成了女权主义运动。
I think feminism, they promote the idea of
equality of women and men, I think education is quite an important factor to open the world to women, and so they can be more independent.
实际上，女权主义更多的实际上是体现在我们的日常生活中，就是说，你在觉得在觉得社会中有些对于女性不公平的事情来，你会有自己的看法，你会站起来说不，这其实就是女权主义在我们生活中的体现。One of them said, was really highlighting the idea of silent feminist, like saying that her mother was a silent feminist because she was the one who was behind all her education and stuff, bringing her up.
My mother's, because she never was able to go to school, she wanted me to do the achievement that she didn't get. So in that way, she didn't really think that daughters are less than sons. So she pushed me to do the most I can achieve, and I guess that's also what a feminist would do.
I spoke to these women, and the next thing I wanted to find out was the relationship between the revolution, the Cultural Revolution, and feminism in China. 我觉得女权主义在中国有2次大的进展。一次就是在五四运动，很多女性开始进入学校，开始学习，她们接受西方思想的熏陶，然后在中国社会，她们是首批提倡女权主义的人。第二个很大的进步就是我们所说的文化大革命，它某些程度上是一个消极的运动，但是在女权主义方面，我觉得它是一个很积极的一个运动。实际上，如果你看看中国历史的话，你会发现中国的女人能够平等的跟男人一起上学，实际上是毛泽东的功劳。Despite all the things that people were telling me, like Chinese community had achieved equality between men and women, I still found out that there are certain things that aren't equal for women. For example, I came across this documentary. It was about baby girls being aborted because Chinese culture preferred boys than girls. I was pretty shocked because before I saw this documentary, I completely didn't know this was still happening. And so I just had to go back to one of my interviewees and find out more about how and why this could happen. Staff are suggesting that some Chinese are screening and aborting female fetuses. Is that true? Yeah, I think that's true. And it used to be more common, but it's not only a problem of China. It's only China have a one-child policy, right? But actually India, Korea, they also have this problem. Well, why would they want to abort baby girls? They think boys are more likely to bring in wealth. Even you don't have one-child policy, still a lot of people choose to go to abortion because it's a girl.
My name is Safia. I'm a 17-year-old British Pakistani. At the start of this project, I believed that feminism has had no effect on Southeast Asian women's lives, whether they were in Britain or their native lands. I thought it'd be interesting to find out how feminism had affected Asian women, because it doesn't seem like it has at all. Because when you think of feminism, you think of it, I don't mean this in a racist way, but you think of it as a white woman's thing. In my experience, Southeast Asian girls are brought up in households rife with inequality, where boys are preferred children, where girls' education and personal development is a secondary consideration to their training as future mothers and wives. I decided to interview some Southeast Asian women, see whether they agreed with me and why they thought it was this way.
I have 2 brothers, but the one that's slightly younger than me, my dad always said he wanted him to become a pilot. And when I got my first job, it was as a seamstress, and he was just like, no, you're not going because it's not going to do you any good. Here, girls from an early age are given the same opportunities, equal opportunities for all, even in the schools.
Part of that has happened because of a feminist movement that's happened here, which has given equality to boys and girls. And do you think that if a movement like that happened in the third world countries, it could affect the boys and girls and they would be treated equally?
No, I think it's got more to do with culture. Culturally, boys are given more priority in third world countries, especially in Pakistan. You find that boys are given the opportunity to go out and do further education. Girls are told, well, no, this is your life, you're going to be a housewife, and it'll be up to your in-laws to send you out. And that does hinder them in some ways.
The tribe I was married into,
if you ask me, it's so cruel, but it's true. They have to have boys only. If they have a girl, they cry. If a woman deliver a boy and all of a sudden they go outside and fire to tell the whole world that, we made it. They don't consider a girl their child. I will give you an example. I have 4 girls, 2 sons, and now my husband has changed because of now children are grown up. But I've heard him and my mom as well. If someone asks him that how many children have you got, he will say 2.
I thought it was unfair that girls are uncelebrated compared to boys, and I wanted to find out how this affected their potential and their confidence.
The girls lack out on education, and especially in third world countries, makes it harder.
It's very hard to run your own business in Pakistan. That's not acceptable. Mixing with men is still, they don't agree with this. A woman should be behind the door.
Do you feel that if you came here you'd have more support?
It's not only women's rights, so many human rights. I think things are not going to change until women get well educated about especially domestic violence, about education, that is their right.
South Asian women as well, I think, have come a long way from the time of when they came to this country, you know, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and how they are now. Whether that really relates to feminism or not, I think is a whole nother debate.
I found out after interviewing South Asian women, finding out about their experiences, that the main influence in their lives isn't feminism, it's to do with culture. Well, white women realised, we can have equal rights, and I hope that Asian women realise that they do have a choice and that they can do something about it, because I think most of them just accept it as part of their culture and stuff when it's not. It is part of their culture, but it's like their culture doesn't have to be like that. Culture can change.
Are you a feminist?
Yeah, I would consider myself a feminist.
If being a feminist means fighting for equality and being equal to men and never giving up an opportunity just because you're a woman, then yes, I will be.
I think so, but I'm not too sure if I would say that to my friends or to people, to most of the general public after the interviews with all the stereotypes they come.
I used to think, I'm not a feminist, but then I met women like Annie and Kay and Karen, and they're like strong working class women who've had to fight.
B. Campbell, when she was talking, you didn't realise how much people had done for feminism and how far they'd gone with it, really.
Because, the women I interviewed were quite, they had a lot of good stuff to tell me, and I've learned a lot from that.
Before it was men can but women can't, but now there's nothing that says women can't but men can.
I think it's really good that women have the rights in this country, because I know what it's like for women who don't have them rights, and it really does make a difference.
Worldwide, there's so much that still needs to be fought for.
Yeah. Well, I just hate the terms. Say, I wouldn't want to just concentrate on helping women, because I'd like to help anyone who needs help, not just women because they're women.
And I can actually say that I know what feminism means, where before I was a bit I didn't really know the proper meaning.
I'm more aware of inequalities, and it's built my confidence up.
Hopefully this documentary will in some way be able to educate other young women about the achievements of feminism, and we can celebrate them.
A girl doesn't need to be playing with paint. She needs to learn to make chapatis. And I don't want to be the girl making chapatis.
Keep on getting it wrong, but that's alright. You got to walk in the dark if you wanna put on the lights. In every heart there's a song that sings from somewhere deep inside. Every heart there's a song that sings from somewhere deep.
That's not the point. It's a principle, but it is hundreds.
Stop and cry, rest your mind, let your wisdom.
Even if we never met again, I felt like I gained so much from the experience today.